All right, view all attendees. So there's a bit of a learning curve here. It looks like we've got people. That's great. Well, listen, yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. This is great. We've got 1 hour. I'm going to try to be mindful of time. And to begin with, get the throat clearing out of the way. I'd like to try something. On your screen somewhere is a little hand symbol, which means you can raise your hand. And I thought it might be interesting to see how many folks, well, let me ask a simple question. How many folks have done some consumer research as an anthropologist before? I'm going to move this a little. So raise your hand if you have. Alex, David, Pam. That's right. How many people are in an academic position right now? Or I'll get this, Alex and David. Was I too fast with that, I wonder? Alex is raising his hand. It's kind of nifty, at least I can see that. So it's good to have at least that feedback. The other thing is, David, would you like to, not David, I'm sorry, Andrew, would you kindly make a mention about how you want to handle comments and discussion as we go through this today? Because I've got a presentation, but I would like for this not to be all about me yakking. It would be more interesting to get some, some back and forth going. And we won't be hearing one another, but you have the opportunity of using the chat window. And there are actually 2 of those. Can you talk about that just for a second?
So yeah, I think the chat window will be better used throughout the webinar to ask kind of ad hoc questions that Ken will address as he's going through. The Q&A tab, which many of you have found, is more for the Q&A section towards the end of the webinar. These are more kind of broad-based topics that probably will require some more time to discuss. But if you have, a technical question, or you just have a question about one of the slides, the chat menu would be probably the best way to do that. And you can actually direct the questions to either all participants or host, presenter. I would not direct them to Ken just because he's going to be, doing his webinar. So if you direct them to me, then I'll kind of pass them along as you don't see the time feature. So the hand feature is in the feedback. It's right where it says, it has a little comment with a check in it. It's above the chat window. So that should help out. But yeah, so hopefully that clarifies the chat and Q&A differentiation. And I'll pass it back to you.
Okay. I was just going to see if I could fool around with my screen just a little bit here, but not too much. That's okay. I'll get rid of that. And we're ready to go. I think, when the phone only rings, in this office maybe once a month. How do we get that thing to stop that? Like that. That's what you do. Welcome again. So we've got our technical issues under control maybe, and hopefully the phone won't ring again. Some student may barge in the door, which is great. I'm Ken Erickson, and there has to be a way to make that stop. But I don't know what it is. So take it off the hook. So this is about consumer ethnography warnings and advice, and I've stolen the title right from Rosalie Wax, and actually before that Don stole the title of a book that we wrote together about doing team ethnography. Here on the second slide that you should see on your screen is a link to a blog that it's just really a one-pager. It's a list of resources that you may find helpful. And a little note about Rosalie Wax. You can click on and see her archives at the University of Chicago, worth looking at. This is a fun, geeky anthropological thing, and somebody really quite wonderful we shall know about and remember about. So the goal for me today is to talk about doing consumer ethnography as an anthropologist and maybe offer some handy hints. I was looking at this as really an opportunity for me to tell some stories and get some feedback from people about really the practical business of doing anthropological practice around consumer issues. And I put the air quotes around consumer for a reason. I want to start off by mentioning that because, yeah, that's what we will do. Let me just mention that. The issue for me is that, you're an anthropologist. We're out there trying to figure out human beings and understand ourselves in relation to the world. And to answer that wonderful ethnographic question, what's going on? We aren't trained to answer the what's going on with consumers question. It's really a term of art in industry and in marketing. And there is a marvelous journal of consumer research with lots of marvelous stuff in it, and the term is out there. But I think it's fun sometimes, and as you represent yourself to companies, to remember that, being an anthropologist gives you a little edge in some respects, maybe not in every respect. And I know that there are people who prefer not to go into a business and say, oh, I'm an anthropologist, I'm going to do this. I think it's important for us to actually do that. I think a little bit of creative essentializing is probably a good idea for anthropologists to be able to continue putting food in their refrigerators, number one, or maybe even not number one, in order to do what we're trained to do. And I think what we're trained to do is important enough that it's okay to say that, I'm an anthropologist. And so for me, often when I'm talking to companies, I'll say, this is consumer work, but really we're interested in understanding people and the context in which they do what they do. So having said that, here's what I would like to do today. I came up with six rather broad categories here, and that's what they are. And I have not yet posted this PowerPoint to that little blog, but I'll do that, or I'll post a link to it so you can download a PDF copy of this at your leisure. So I want to talk first about what I just mentioned, that we have an opportunity to keep this anthropological, and that means doing what we're trained to do, essentially. And we're good at some things. We're not so, we're not in supply chain management here, although, we may work in that arena. We're not about really, well, you can go on and on about what we're not about. But the point is that anthropologists sometimes suffer some existential angst about and you hear it, quite frankly, and I still hear it from students and others, and from people I care about and respect who have been through rather traditional anthropology programs, as I have been, and who find that there's either not a lot of understanding or sometimes a bit of, concern about doing this work in industry. It's like, are you watering it down? Is this anthropology light? And certainly not. If anyone was at the EPIC conference, they know that that's the case. So for me, I think that first issue is one not to ignore. I know that a lot of younger students run into that issue, and I think it's something that we don't have to dance around. We can face that directly. Next is I'm just going to talk about a project itinerary. I'm going to use that as a way to frame this discussion sort of from beginning to end. There are places in which I have some things that may be helpful to think about as you're planning or doing one of these kinds of projects. In particular, we'll start with maybe the first kind of chunk is selling, scoping, and preparation, and talk about field work. Interestingly, that's where I'm really talking about theory, because I don't see the two as separate. I don't see method and theory as separate anymore. It doesn't make any sense to me. And it certainly is not a sensible question to ask, do applied anthropologists use theory? That was a question that was being asked maybe 20 years ago, and I think we've dispensed with that question, for heaven's sakes. We're actually putting it to work and generating new theory, just as any other anthropologist worth the name, I think, is doing, right? So then taking notes and reporting results, and I put those together. You'll notice that, we think of note-taking as something that happens during fieldwork and not later. Nonsense. It happens all the time throughout the research itinerary. And we'll talk about reporting and some of the issues about that and working with clients, what their expectations may or may not be, and how, what some of the stories, some tales of the field might be about that. And last, giving up and giving it away. This is something about serendipity and about planning for that, putting yourself in a position where you can allow the unexpected everyday business of daily life to surface in your own work and to influence your findings in ways that are unpredictable. That approach, along with other elements of the anthropological approach, sometimes are discomfiting for business clients, but often they find them quite delightful and interesting. So I'm starting off with this slide, and there's Laura Nader at, I don't know, it was a meeting with The Economist. I pulled it off the internet somewhere, and you can see from where. Here's what she said in Up the Anthropologist many, many years ago in that edited volume that Del Himes put together about reinventing anthropology, reminding us that we have an awful lot to offer here. That's just a reminder of that, which we should know. As Elizabeth Brighty would remind me, we're not just about setting up when we're doing consumer work or organizational work for that matter. We're actually setting in a variety of directions at a variety of levels, sort of institutionally and culturally. So for me, if I were to draw out, as I think I have in the Project Itinerary slide right up here, you know, this looks pretty linear. If I were a better graphic designer, I would have made this into a circle, and I should do, in fact. And that's what I mean by saying that there's really no starting point here. At some point, you know, someone signs a contract and you begin a project, but before that, you're already thinking about what a project might be like. Before that, you're pre-qualifying, as salespeople say, a potential client, finding out what you can about them and their interests and needs, and trying to make some guesses about what it is they might ask you to do. Sometimes you don't have time for that. Someone calls you up out of the blue, says we'd like you to do a piece of work. But in any case, if you step back and look at the work that a lot of anthropologists do in consumer work, you find out that they get repeat business from clients. And so what you learn in one project feeds into what happens in the next project. And certainly what you learn in other projects in other domains are going to influence what happens later. The same thing is true about looking at this thing. You know, these are not really distinctive categories, right? I mean, they're for convenience, right? And in some ways, they are real categories, and in other ways, they're obviously kind of constructed, and we move through them and back and forth within them during a project. Okay, that said, clients do expect things to move in a linear way. You know, Sam Ladner has a wonderful new book called Practical Ethnography, and she lays out something really interesting. She says that she likes to use project management software right from the start to lay out every step of the project very carefully to show this element is going to take this much time and cost this much. I do the same thing with a spreadsheet. I do it with an Excel sheet, and I color in the bars, one bar for a month. It would have been nice if I had a slide of that. I'll remember to put it up on the blog. I'll make a note of that effect. But you put together some kind of a timeline or project management tool, and what Sam says, and it's true, the reason for doing that is to provide for your proposal to a client some rhetorical force. It uses that cultural world, that set of expectations of business that says, you know, everything is based on time. Everything is based on money. She designs this beautiful little chart, and then she throws it away and goes out and does her ethnography. But in the meantime, you know, she's actually thought through the steps, which is helpful, and she's demonstrated to her business clients that that's something that she knows how to do. So understanding that you need to learn the language of business is obvious something that you need to do as an ethnographer. It means hanging out, it means doing a lot of listening, all those things. We'll talk about some strategies for doing that in a bit. But the point is that, you know, most business folks are used to kind of linear things. They're used to specific answers to specific questions. They really like answers that solve problems, and they like to find solutions. Now, sometimes we can help them get there, and a lot of the times what we do is end up reframing their questions for them. You have to be very careful with that. Some clients get that. Other clients, if you haven't done your homework, and if they're in a different sort of context, that may not work so well. You know, induct, deduct, product. Well, maybe we're doing abductive work or something else. And you start talking about abduction with clients, you know, the snooze factor, you'll hear crickets. Nothing, right? So you need to use the language of your clients. That should be pretty obvious. And anybody who's looked at any, you know, look at Bruno Latour, we know the research process is messy, and it's a social process, it's a cultural process, and so on. But there are business folks who get this, and I'll just mention that, you know, that design thinking, for example, looks very much like anthropological thinking to me. And there are folks, there's a lot of new and interesting cross-fertilization between design and anthropology, and you see that in business. And remember that, a lot of your clients will have had an anthropology class at some point. And that's an interesting conversation, and often it comes up. Someone says, I was one of the most interesting courses, but I'm not sure, how do you apply that here? So you have an opportunity to do some teaching as you move forward. So, Project Itinerary. You make contact, you scope out a contract or an agreement, you do field work. There's usually some kind of interim reporting, and then there's final reporting. And you could add another step to that, and that is going back later with the client and seeing what the heck did you do with this work, which also helps you maybe to get another assignment from that client as well. So all along this itinerary, you can think about where are the opportunities to engage that client and have that conversation that clarifies what it is you think you're going to be doing out in the field while leaving it open. And that's the key. For me, there is an expectation out there that ethnographic work is loosey-goosey and takes a long time, and maybe it's not as systematic as other approaches, right? Well, none of those things are always true, obviously. So you have an obligation and opportunity to explain to clients what it is you're doing without getting down into too much of the nitty-gritty that you bore people to tears, right? So that's always an interesting thing. So let's look at that first bit. How do you represent yourself in your work? I said here it's not as easy as it used to be. I was having this conversation with Patty Sunderland and Rita. Had it a couple of times. That back, in the late 90s, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, this was a fairly new thing in business. And walking in, people would. It wasn't that people were. The phone wasn't ringing off the hook for anthropologists in private practice, but certainly you could go into a meeting, say one of these sessions in which market researchers gather. You find out where those are. Back in the day, it was an organization called Institute for International Research, right? And they would invite suppliers or academics or others to come talk to market research people, and I used that to good effect. It ended up with a client relationship with Epson that's lasted more than 14 years. I think we're working on 15 years. We're still doing some things with Epson from time to time. The point is that in the 2000s, you could walk in and say, wow, ethnography. People said, wow, that's new. We like new stuff. What's going on with that? Market researchers are research geeks. Let's remember that. They care about research. They want to know about how things work. They have a particular tradition. Often it's informed by a sort of, let's see. Well, it's certainly not informed by ethnographic theory and as a general thing. So that for these folks, it's a new thing. It was. Now, every ad agency worth its salt, medium-sized and large, probably has an anthropologist and probably offers some ethnographic work or what they call ethnography, which is actually a helpful thing for us. It also makes it a little bit more difficult. As we know, budgets are smaller and people want stuff done quicker. And so in that regard, it's more difficult. So we as anthropologists have to be looking around to figure out how it may take us longer to get the engagement. The engagement may not pay us well and so on. So it's not so easy. Let me say something about this last bit. Face-to-face or else. About 7 years ago, we were engaged by basically a Madison Avenue advertising firm that had a branch that was interested in women. And they had a lot of budget, and they had this notion that they wanted to do a large-scale sample survey of women around the world to identify tribes. That's how they framed it up. Underneath that question was a question about what's going on with women and women's economic power. Really interesting question, right? How is this changing around the world? What's happening with the emerging middle class in everywhere? What are the commonalities? What are the differences as marketers? And they were working with, as an agency in support of some big brands who were global and had to think about how do we communicate with people around the world. So this was kind of came out of the blue, and I think we got it got called because we probably thanks to people like Bruno Monnier and others who've worked with us in the past and done really great video. That was kind of sexy at the time. So the engagement was going to be in I don't know, it was like $300,000 or something. It was so nice, big. It was like, wow, this is such a great project. It's going to take a long time. We're going to get to do real ethnography here. And so you get on the phone and you say, you know, we really need to have a face-to-face sit down and go through expectations and so on. Yes, we'd like to do that, but you know, don't go out of your way. You know, we're pretty busy over here, but yeah, it'd be nice. I said, well, I'm coming through New York. I bought a ticket because I needed to do it. Sat down with the client. Client said, this is just a meet and greet. We don't have time to do very much here. I thought, okay, so we really didn't walk through all the expectations. But the good thing was, client said, we have a project manager who's going to be attached to this project with whom you'll work. You can here this person is, and you'll get to be working with that person. Well, that person kind of vanished after about the third week, and we never heard from her again. And in the process of arranging a multi-sided ethnography, I think we had 13 countries represented. We had two videographers, two or three. We had three videographers. It was an enormous project. And it was complicated by the fact that, on the one hand, they had this statistical, you know, they had this sample survey thing that they were doing that they hired someone else with to do. We had said we need to talk to them to make sure that what we're doing somehow aligns with what they're doing. Ideally, it'd be nice to have the ethnography up front to frame the questions, but compromises happen. And you can work both ways. We'd like to see what questions they're asking so that we can maybe, you know, have things that maybe inform their understanding of what they get and so on. Those things never happened. So when we got to the end of the project, you can imagine cringeworthy train wrecks and hilarity ensued, and it wasn't fun. It was very difficult. We did our midpoint report, and folks were saying, well, this is just, I'm not sure if this is going to work. And so eventually, you know, we actually wrapped up the project, I think, in a way that was satisfying to the researchers, maybe less satisfying for the client. But I chalk part of that up to a lack of face-to-face communication with the client. I can't emphasize that enough. If a project, in my thinking, if it's more than 10 or 15 grand, if it's more than a 2-week in and out, answer some tactical question, you need to sit down with a client. And most of this presentation, in fact, is about trying to understand what's going on in the client's cultural world and trying to build a better bridge. You can't do that with a couple of emails and a story. So let's go along this project itinerary. I'm stealing the word itinerary, by the way, from Dominique Dejoux, who talks about a consumer itinerary, an itinerary of consumption in which you look at objects as they move over time through different cultural spaces and take on different kinds of meanings. They move through different social spaces. An object is created here, it's designed here, it's marketed here, it's in the store here, it gets into a shopper's hands, moves home, is shared, is stored, is used, is disposed of. And all along that itinerary, there are interesting moments where you can explore what's going on. We use that as a kind of organizing principle for a lot of what we do. So we use that here for looking at the research process. So, you know, I just wanted to highlight a couple of and very quickly, a couple of the theoretical levers that we like to use. One of them is this Nancy Munn kind of idea that an object, any object, right? Any object that's been part of an exchange system, its value transforms through exchange. Exchange is the action through which new meanings are applied to this object. You know, Grant McCracken, who's another, he's on the blog, was interviewed recently about something. I think he was making wonderfully snarky comments about big data. Oh no, I get maybe that was in a tweet that he did. Grant McCracken said, you know, when he talks about value, he's talking about meaning, right? I like that idea. I think it's nice. So the meaning of the object or its value, and that can be economic value or cultural value, transfers over time. It transforms over time. Things change as they move through systems of exchange. And when we're dealing with marketplace ethnography, of course, that's very much the bullseye for these companies. They want to know what's going on at that moment of transaction, and later on what happens with the object after it's been sold and used and thought about, and maybe you come back and buy it again. So the first idea for me is that's what those little arrows are on that thing between pre-purchase, purchase, transport, storage, sharing, use, and disposal. Pretty simple idea. It looks like it's like a value chain, right, in business. A little different. And I find that to be a helpful tool. It's a helpful tool for ethnographers in the field who can be looking for those value transforms and trying to find out what the meaning of the thing is before and after each of those moments. And you have to figure out what those moments are, of course, because culturally they'll vary. Which are the significant ones? Is it transport home? Maybe you don't transport it home. Maybe you eat the ice cream on the spot, so transport's not such an issue, maybe. Napkins might be. Of course, you know, Bourdieu's taste and distinction, really helpful. And let me tell you a quick story about that one. We were doing some work for a major apparel manufacturer a while back. We've done a lot of work for them, in fact, that sells a lot of its products in big box retail, term of art for what we know as Walmart, Target, Costco, and those are actually club stores, but it's still big box retail. And at the time, Walmart was going through some interesting changes and had redesigned their stores to some extent. And we were doing work in Walmart to look at how consumers were understanding and interacting with a display and to understand how they understood the product, kind of widen the frame to say, okay, you know, the initial assignment was, is this display working? We came in and said, you know, you can't look at the display alone. You got to look at the context of how people, you know, where are they coming from, what's in the shopping basket, that whole wider context that people always bring to those moments, you know. Past, present, and future are always already in people's heads while they're shopping. We're trying to widen that frame. And we were in people's homes looking at upper middle class people who would say, we never shop at Walmart. Well, not really. We don't. No, we're Target. Target people. We go to Target. And you'd look under the kitchen table and there'd be a 12-pack of Coca-Cola and say, well, where'd that come from? Oh, well, that's, you know, Walmart's just on the way home from picking up the kids from school, and it's so convenient, you know, and it's a good price. So yeah, we did, but we don't shop at Walmart. Right? That's the power of actually being there, right, to see what's going on. So if you take a look at taste and distinction, you can see that you know, people want to represent who they are, of course, by the brands that they use and the shopping that they do and where they do it. So we came back to our client and said, it looks like you know, there's a thing going on about taste and distinction about these different categories, and we expanded on that a little bit and talked about what Walmart seemed to be trying to do, which was create a different level of distinction and to try and be more like Target. And the client latched onto that, and parts of our PowerPoint made it upstairs to the CEO who said, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. We need to think about the way we're presenting ourselves to Target in a different way, because they were supplying both of these companies, right? And it was Bourdieu that did it, and helpful in that regard. You could say the same thing about almost any bucket of anthropological theory, and it's up to you as an anthropologist to see what's going to fit you know, the situation you find in the field, and also the situation that you find in the company, right? How do you do that? Let me go back just a second. We've already moved up to field work. Let's go back to selling, scoping, and preparation for just a second. It's that face-to-face meeting. If you get into the actual building where people are doing the hiring and you talk to the market researcher, let's assume that you're dealing with a medium or large-sized firm where they've got a place, you know, they're not just all dispersed all over the country, which can happen as well, smaller firms. It's really important to spend time looking around in that space. Anthropologists are real good at looking at the physical space, thinking about space and place. I think back to the first time we did work for Wendy's a long time ago, right? I walked into a Wendy's headquarters, and it's like this temple in some ways, honoring the former founder, or the founder who had died, right? Whose name escapes me right now, and you guys can remember. Maybe somebody in the chat room can remind me who it is. Yeah, there's a typo in Bourdieu, you're right. Fix that, thank you. Let's see. Let me take a moment just to look at these. Yeah, Alex, we could talk about that. I think you're right about that. Alex made a comment about design thinking and so on, but you know, trying to find a window or a doorway into a language that people in business can understand, sometimes that's the kind of lever that's helpful. My point is that the ethnography doesn't start when you go into the field. When you start that field process, the minute you're meeting that client, you're doing some ethnography. You're thinking about what are the objects in that space that represent what this place is about. What do you see on the bulletin board? I always make sure that I drink a lot of coffee before I go visit a client, because then I have to go use the restroom, which means I got to walk down the hall and I got to poke my nose around a little bit and say, excuse me, I'm lost, where's the restroom? and you begin to have conversations with people. And just those little moments can actually be helpful, giving you a better understanding on the ground of what your client may be about. That's actually an old sales guy trick, right? An old, probably Zig Ziglar would approve of that. So that goes to the point of the fact that, you're always already in the field with this stuff. And that includes recruiting as well, which I'm not going to talk about very much today, but that's really a part of the field work, and it's a great source of information. Sometimes we do use field houses, others to do the recruiting for us. I prefer not to when you can get away with it, but who has time? Often you don't. So back to the theory, yeah, whatever you want to use, it's all good. Another example, that it's a quick one, and I think we'll maybe drop in a little video here just for fun. Although it's not related directly to this theory. It could come later. I'll do it now. Not this minute, though. What you see here is a trajectory, or really an itinerary for flying, what it's like from pre-flight, in-flight, arrival, for a project we did for Boeing some years ago. Boeing was interested in the experiences of disabled passengers around the world because they had been asked by Japan Airlines to attend to the fact that Japan is a graying country, a place where there are more people who are in fact differently abled and who may not hear as well, may have limited mobility, and so on. So Boeing had put together this project, and we did the usual thing. We did participant observation. We went to Chile. We went flying with disabled people. We got in touch with local disabled people's organizations. We did the same thing in China and in India and in the United States, and took a videographer along, got permission to go on the plane and film, sometimes beforehand, sometimes on the fly. And at the end of that thing, we came up with a report and some findings for Boeing, and I was really thinking that they would not want us to share those technical details, that is, the sort of tactical findings about here were the pain points, here were the problems travelers experienced. They found that they had a pretty good understanding of those issues already. What we provided was confirmation about what they already knew, and in a few cases, one that you'll see in a moment, a bit of a surprise to them, because the work brought out something they had not thought of too much before that needed attention. But when the thing was finished, we found it so much fun. We learned so many things, and we thought it was an interesting project, and we came back with a really beautiful video and interesting video that people seemed to enjoy, and we thought we'd like to present this. So we asked Boeing, we said, what's the non-proprietary stuff that we could share? Boeing said, you share all the stuff of the tactical stuff, but don't share this diagram, because what you've got here is a ritual process model. And we had framed this up in terms of a Turnerian separation, liminality, incorporation model. And beyond that, we looked at the characteristics of those moments. Within that context of liminality, what are the things that one might expect to happen? What do we know from looking at rituals, of incorporation of rituals, rites of rite de passage, right, around the world? And this is a moment of inversion. It's a moment of in which your physical, the aspects of your physical body, right, your body are constrained, right? They're going to be new. You have to dress a certain way. You have to be a certain way. You have to stand a certain way. You may have to wear special clothing. You have special food. There are often instances of role reversal, right? Or intensification of aspects of people's roles, heightened sexuality or lack of sexuality, or you name it. It can go in a lot of directions, but basically it pushes cultural elements to the edges of things and highlights certain things. You think about flying, that's certainly true. It's kind of a no-brainer. But that was the aspect that they said don't share with anybody. This was the new thing that helped us think in new ways about what's going on. Yeah. Let me say one other thing about that, and it's something I missed before. I want to say it up here, looking again at this very first business about scoping out, selling scoping and preparation. After you make contact and visit the headquarters and look around. In scoping out this contract, one of the things that we found tremendously helpful and really important is to specify who owns the data. We own the data, and nobody's barked about that now that we put it in the contract. back in the day, we would say, okay, we're going to do this piece of work. It's going to take this long. We expect these payment terms, 50% up front is industry standard. Don't always get that. And, you know, the usual contractual obligations are specified, and often the client will say, no, you need to sign this boilerplate contract, that's fine. But we had a couple of things happen that made us realize how important it is to stay in control of your data. The first story is this one. We had video of of people buying dog food, right? Interesting stuff. Companion animals. We've done some work on companion animals, and so we were in a farm store, a feed store, and we were watching people buy dog food. And the first thing that happened that kind of let me know how important the work was when some people around the table, a room of maybe 12 or 15 mid-level executives who had commissioned the work, said, that's not our client. That tattooed young woman is not our client. Okay, right away, that's the anthropological value. We had to break that down and say, well, yeah, you know, maybe she's at the tail end of the normal curve here, but think about the implications of you're thinking this is not your client. She's buying the biggest bag of your food that she could possibly buy, and she understands your product. She can talk about your product in a knowledgeable way about the ingredients list and the chondroitin and the beneficial effects for her puppy. That was the first one. The second one was we had film of another store in which a representative for a competitor was in the store, actually a contract employee, very common in retail, particularly in big box. You go into the printer aisle, there'll be someone helping demonstrate Epson printers with a badge on it. It doesn't say Best Buy. It does not say, you know, the name of the retail store. It says Epson because they're a contract employee there to demonstrate their product. We had a guy who was talking about his product and saying some things about the product belonging to the company for whom we work. And he was saying some things that upset our client. The meeting stopped. Suddenly, a guy slams his hand down on the table and says, we want that video. We're going to take him to court. We can't allow this. This guy's disparaging our brand. He's lying to our consumers about this. That's not going to be tolerated. And the discussion went from there for about 10 or 15 minutes. We had to back off and say, really, that's not the purpose of this work. And we realized that we needed a piece of language in our contract that says, you know, anything that we deliver to you is to be used for the purposes, you know, these purposes, for market research, for branding, for positioning, that sort of thing, and never to finger anybody, essentially. Not for litigation. You can't do that. I don't know if anybody's, we haven't run into that situation since, but it made us think about the importance of doing that. The second was where the example was the rather large global project in which at about midpoint in the project, the client said, we want all the video data. We're not happy with you guys doing the editing because we've just gotten this quantitative research and it looks rather different from what you've said, and so we have to meld it together. And we dug our heels in and said, no, you know what, if you look at the contract, because by then we put it in, you'll see that you will own the deliverables. That is, you'll own the final report and you'll own the video, but you do not own the raw data. We didn't want to turn that over for a number of reasons. First of all, we were concerned about how they would represent the work, knowing, of course, that one never knows what really happens with one's work at the end of the day. Do your best. The second thing was that we were concerned about confidentiality of the people that we had talked to because we were using a signed consent form that said we are going to maintain the highest possible level of confidentiality with regard to keeping your information confidential, right? We don't guarantee it. You can't do that legally. So the point is that we were able to refer to the contract and say, you know, you really need to look at that because, you know, that's one of the things that's quite important to us, and we included that. I would say that in informed consent, generally, most people we just had a question about informed consent. That's a good one. We may aggregate some of these questions, and maybe this is a good time to stop and do that, since I just backtracked a little bit. So we talked a little bit about how you frame things up at the beginning, how you scope things, and the importance of using, and really the value of putting theory to work in these projects. Right? So we have a couple of questions, and maybe I don't know if Andrew would like to aggregate those.
Yeah, I think the question about informed consent is probably a good one to tie into this. And then
Sure.
Alex also had a question about the public accessibility of blogging during the research.
Right. Well, we can address those. I think generally, I'd say most clients get that business about confidentiality, but often if someone comes out of a decent marketing program that they're one that's talked about and trained students in market research, there are a set of professional standards that include informed consent. Informed consent for us is anyone who's been in an academic IRB, sat on one or had to go before one. They often don't understand some of the issues about dealing with folks who don't read and write, and we very often run into that issue, or folks who speak a language other than English, and if you've got forms ready to go, then you've got to have them in different languages. Actually, we represent it as a way to both protect ourselves and to protect the client. We want to make sure that we have a release form if we're going to be using video. I would also add that in addition to saying who owns the data, we're quite careful about saying what it is that you can do with the video. As I mentioned, it's not to be used for litigation, and we always say that you've got to use it keeping in mind that confidentiality can be an issue for people. Be careful with that. And also that video is not to be used for public performance. We've come away with video sometimes that's really quite high quality. And if you look at what's going on television, Ford has been doing this, for example, of getting consumers, and in fact, in automotive, I've seen a lot of it, not just Ford. They'll set up a situation and put someone in it and videotape them as they encounter a new product and then get their reaction to it. So it's a little bit like an ethnographic kind of thing. And we've had hints that people wanted to use our stuff for that, and we've said, no, you know what, that costs a lot more, and really that's not our speciality, right? So we keep that away. But yeah, I think they understand some things about informed consent. A new meaning to dog fooding. Yeah. And the other thing about blogging, we'll talk about that in just a second, because that comes up under the heading of how you report and how you do the work in that way. Anything else? This may be a good time to pause and ask if anyone else has another hot question, or if there's anything that came up that I might address that I haven't so far.
I don't think I saw anything. If anyone has any questions, please do send them in the comments again. I'm trying to look through everything. Pam seems to have her hand up, but I don't know if she has something to say. Pam Clendon? Maybe not. Okay. Taking note and reporting. What you're seeing here is an image of a blog that was developed by Martin Hoyen. And I need to make a note to myself about Martin. Martin has a website called American Ethnography, one word, AmericanEthnography.com. It's a little bit irreverent and fun and interesting, and he republishes things that haven't been seen the light of day in a long time, and also some new things and interesting, kind of edgy stuff. He created for us a proprietary blog. Proprietary meaning that it belongs to him and we pay him to use it. And what it does is it allows our field workers and our clients to engage in the business of sharing essentially what are not quite field notes. They're not scratch notes, right? Remember Sanjek's book about field notes? There's like you got your head notes, you got your scratch notes that look like this, and then you have kind of summary field notes. Whoops. That look like the note that you would see below this image. And this is a tool that Martin developed, thinking carefully that we don't want to share a whole ton of field notes. We want to share a little bit of insights. What's the main thing that we learned from this field encounter? So that when we're doing a project that takes more than just a few days, if we're doing a multi-sided project, we've been fortunate enough to have done some of those, or a project that spans more than a week or two, which can be very important, right? You need to catch some weekends, or you may need to catch, a little bit of summer and a little bit of, before school's out, and depends on the product category, right? So you got a blog up here that allows you to post one photograph only, put a title on it, put a caption on it, and it forces you to hopefully write a short thing, and then you can comment. And we had some interesting things happen the first couple of times we used this. First of all, we were fortunate enough, and I've used that a lot, because we are damn lucky, because we've had some marvelous relationships with some of these some folks who work in both research and who
are researchers, but who are maybe often, category managers for a product. They'll join us in the field sometimes, and we'll ask them to blog. Sometimes they don't, but occasionally they really get engaged with that process and will leave comments. And sometimes those comments actually reorient our work in the field. One of the best examples is probably from Boeing. So before I tell you that story, let's go back to this video, and I want to talk about surprises just a little bit. If I've got the right one. Set this up for a second. It's a little slow to do that. It's okay. This is the work for Boeing, and what you need to pay attention to is the, well, I'll let you just watch it. It just takes a couple of minutes.
I'm Andy Arias, and I'm 25 years old, and I'm headed to
So, back again. That's exactly where, at that point in the video, was where the boss of the Boeing design group, the Payloads Concept Center up in Washington State, said, "Stop the video for a second. I want to ask something." And he said, can you make a copy of that real quick and get that video out to our partners who help us with seatbelts? He said, we've been working on all these other aspects of cabin design, but the seatbelt hasn't had a look in 45 years or 40 years. I forget what it was. The point was that moment was allowed them to see in a very sort of visceral way how difficult it can be for somebody to do a very simple task and an aspect of cabin design that had been overlooked. And the result was that they tasked a design team in Arizona with coming up with some alternatives. If you fly Southwest Airlines, they joke about how easy it is to buckle a seatbelt. In case you haven't driven a car in 20 years, here's how to do it. Well, in fact, fold a thumb under one hand and try to do a seatbelt on a plane with one hand. It's almost impossible to do. It's very difficult. So this was a surprise. And those kind of surprises are always going to happen. They happen because you were there, you're in the context, and stuff will happen that you didn't expect just by being in the field. The same thing will happen if you offer yourself the opportunity to work with people to help you take notes and find out what's important to the company. That's why it's so delightful when you get a chance to bring someone into the field. Not 20 people, not 10 people, not, God help me, 7 Japanese engineers at once going into people's homes, which was better than not going at all, but it was quite the rodeo when that happened. So the point is that, you know, engaging with the clients about this stuff, being there when you're presenting, hearing the response that you get back are all really helpful things. We could say a few things very quickly, and there's not much really that needs to be said about presenting other than the fact that PowerPoint is the gold standard in this world. You need to know how to present those things, or a PDF, or a Prezi, or a video. Video, be careful. Video can get you in trouble. Quick story. We were doing work on fast food, QSR is the term of art, quick service restaurants. We had a video of a woman talking about her relationship with the staff at the drive-thru at McDonald's. This was for another QSR client. We were trying to emphasize the fact that there was a relationship there, despite the sort of industrialized sort of drive-thru thing. They knew her well enough, they would just hand the food out the window. They didn't even have to take her order. They would look around the window, see who it was, take care of her. If they forgot something or if she ordered something different on some days, they'd inquire what was going on. They were on a first-name basis. And we were trying to hit home that notion that even though we're dealing with low-paid service workers who are at the counter, that they have an opportunity to make relationships with people, and that that's something we wanted the company to recognize. Unfortunately, our video showed a woman who looked like she was not especially attractive on video. The woman had dental problems. The woman was overweight. The woman sounded as though she were not from a television commercial. So when our clients heard her speak, all they saw were those features of her person, and they did not hear what we wanted them to hear. Was that she had a personal relationship on a daily basis, was a loyal customer because of these relationships that were there. Sometimes audio alone is better, sometimes no video is better, and that's why I think that Ken Anderson jokingly, maybe not quite jokingly, says ethnography is dead. He wants to do something else. He wants to be more tactical. Well, he was saying that at a AAA meeting, and he was using it as a way to generate discussion. But it is true that very often video gets in the way of your findings. You have to think very carefully about the purpose of video. It can have a long shelf life. That's a wonderful thing. But it can also get lost on a shelf just like your other reports can. Making things available in streaming video form is probably better. Keeping them up on a website and then reminding the client 3 months later that it's still there can be helpful. And making sure that your client has received it. In some large organizations, you may work for the research team over here on this side, and the actual client is down here on this side, and come to find out 3 months after a project, spoke to a client and said, so what did you think of the video? I haven't had a chance to talk to you. We've been busy. She says, I've never seen it. So we had to kind of do a workaround. Constant contact with that client can be very helpful. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it pays off, I think. Cringe-worthy tough spots. The last thing I'd like to say is just that. Part of the process of what you're doing as an anthropologist working for these companies, you're finding out how quickly people learn about what's valuable about this approach. People like it when it works well, when it's applied in a situation that's, in the case of the work that we primarily do, when it's exploratory work that's designed to open up a new perspective on a product or a product category. When we're looking at something beyond the sort of tactical questions around whether I should use plastic or glass to bottle this juice product that I'm selling in mom and pop grocery stores. If you take that and widen it up to understanding mom and pop grocery stores, it becomes more interesting for the anthropologist and more useful. It adds value to the set of questions that, and that's business speak, right? Another conversation about what added value really means, valuation and all that. You know, you're giving them something more than just a tactical response. And if you've done that a couple of times with a client, when the next time you go in to present and somebody holds up their hand in the back of the room and says, "Excuse me, Dr. Erickson, it seems to me that a sample of 4 people is not a very reliable sample. Geez, how do you learn anything from 5 people? That's nothing." Oh, yes. Yeah, but how many observations? How many contexts? Well, why do this happened to me recently, and I was thinking of my answer, and I'm going to explain I'm going to mansplain it. You know, I didn't have to because my client stood up and said, "Excuse me, you have to understand the focus and the intent of this work. This is rather open-ended. This is context. We're understanding the context here. The unit of analysis," I think he even used that word, "the unit of analysis is not the person here. It's that context that we want to understand and explore. And it's going to help us generate new ideas. It's not just about answering this teeny question, but we're going to open it up." So at the end of the day, if you've done your work right, if you follow these steps now, that is, there's really not steps. You keep your head open and your heart open to listening to what keeps the client up at night. Great question to ask. What keeps you awake at night? What's in the pit of your stomach? What's gnawing at you? My job, they're going to fire my butt if I don't solve this problem. You listen to those things, it gives you a different perspective on stuff, and you can make that anthropological bridge, right, between this world of the so-called consumer, other people out there, and your client, who may realize, hey, you know what, I go to Walmart too. I have some experience about that. And you begin to play with that interaction between the organization and the world of goods and services as they're experienced by real people in their daily lives. Get that to happen, right? You'll have clients advocating for you, and you'll get referral business because you know what? People move around. So that the client that we had 15 years ago went from one place to another, called us up. After 5 years, went someplace else, called us up again. So sticking around and being persistent about this work, I think, can result in having business clients who actually advocate for the work. Wow, an hour just vanished. What do you think, Andrew? What do you think, participants?
Yeah, I think if you guys are willing to stick around for a little bit longer, I think opening up for some general Q&A might be a useful endeavor. I think
I've eaten all the time. I've bloviated for too long.
We should have gone for 2 hours, you know.
No. Everyone would be sawing off.
No, but
fundamental questions. I don't know if I ended on that note, really. Value, valuation, sustainability, opening things up for these organizations. Very tough to know. I would say, let's look at questions. So there's Joe Rama and Ben Ross of the famous Ben Ross China blog, somewhere in Fujian some years ago. Any other questions?
So I think one of the good questions was you spoke earlier about the client who just kind of refused to have that face-to-face meeting. And so what would your advice be in a situation like that?
Run screaming. I would say don't get caught up in if you have the time, make the budget to follow up and keep asking. And it doesn't always work, frankly. And I think that was maybe an especially weird situation. There were things going on with that organization that I don't even know about and don't understand. So I'm not sure if I have a good answer for that. Being there and trying, setting it up early, building into your budget. Perhaps one thing we could have done is built in something other than just a single midpoint. I mean, we did the blog thing and they never got engaged. They never got involved. You can put all of those things up there, but if people don't have time or don't have the interest or doing other things, then it's not going to work. So I don't know if there's an easy answer to that.
Yeah, no. So one of the other, we are running out of time, so I don't want to take up any more time than necessary, but one of the questions we had was if you had any sense about what consumer research was like elsewhere in the world, in different countries.
It's kind of a globalized business these days. There are global organizations of market researchers there, just as there are for anthropologists. And focus groups are still, it's really interesting to look at the China situation. There are now focus group companies all over China, every place. You can find moderators. And you'll find people doing ethnography in China, but less. Right, Jo Young has a practice within Ipsos where she tries to promote that, and it's rather difficult. So that I think there are opportunities, and I would say that one of the things that kept us afloat, barely hanging by our fingernails, right, like that, was the fact that we could do work in China, and we'd had some experience doing that successfully and having fun doing it, and that sort of kept things going during the meltdown. So in other places, there are opportunities to do things. The question becomes: do you find clients that are interested in going to Chile or going to Colombia? Right. The trick for us, I think, the interesting piece for us is, and it's happened a few times, is non-U.S. companies hiring us to do work either in China or in the United States. That becomes particularly interesting. But building those networks takes a long time. They're quite difficult and expensive, and this is not about how to market yourself as an anthropologist. It's a whole other story. And I'm not good at it, so I don't know what I can say with that. But yeah, go forth and do some ethnography, right? And raise your hands if we're done. I'm going to raise my hand. Can I do that?
Yeah, no, I think, I'm sorry that we couldn't get to every question from people. If it's all right with you, Ken, if people send in emails about questions, I'll pass them along.
Yeah, and I've got a couple other things that I'll post on the blog. Let me go back to that page again in case people need to see it. Right there.
There you go. Yeah, stay active, guys. So just some housekeeping. We will be doing these webinars for every first and third Wednesday of the month, hopefully for the 2014-2015 period. Next webinar will be on October 1st, and we'll actually having a little bit more of a special event style. We'll have 4 speakers on the current Ebola outbreak and the anthropological role that is being played right now and potentially could be playing in the future. So definitely check that out. Kind of a different turn than the professional development, but still a very interesting discussion to be had. And thank you very much, Ken, for making yourself available. This was immensely useful, and I think everyone seemed to really like it.
The messy business of doing the anthropology for doing it for hire. All right, hey, thanks, guys. It was fun to put it together. Look forward to getting some feedback from you guys. It'd be great. Thank you.